Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, in the news this week, we have North Korea talking with Russia on possible denuclearization. We're going to have more on the U.S.-China trade war that is becoming quite a bit of a hot topic here, especially with these tariffs going back and forth. And also more on the opioid crisis, which we've covered before, but is getting increasingly worse.
That's right.
But first, we're going to look at some what the teachers are facing. It's a trend that began late this winter with teachers in West Virginia demanding an increase in pay. From there, it spread to Kentucky and Arizona, and now the latest state to protest is Oklahoma. The public school teachers there are not only asking for a raise, but more funding for the school system itself.
Not only are they saving or saying more money is needed, they're going on strike and taking their plight to the state capitol in Oklahoma City. Due to the push by teachers, Governor Mary Fallin signed a bill which will give teachers a $6,000 increase in pay, and their support staff, like, of course, teachers' aides, janitors, and so forth, will increase to $1,250. Now, the bill also will give an additional $50 million for school funding. However, teachers were asking for $200 million.
Oklahoma public school teachers are some of the lowest paid in the nation, and according to the Oklahoman's Ben Felder, the general education funding is down 28% per student since 2008. So the governor is pleased with the progress she has made, but it clearly has not been sufficient for educators. So they have become lobbyists and packed the halls of their state capitol, making it their mission to talk to every lawmaker they can.
That's right. Well, Liz Hoggett and her fellow educators from the Norman Public School waited over an hour to meet with the senator over their district, Rob Standridge. However, when he finally came out and greeted his secretary, told him that they needed to reschedule because he had a roll call to attend.
So they really didn't get to talk to him.
No, they waited for a very long time, and then they just basically saw him walk by.
Well, Liz, a third-generation teacher, was frustrated but determined not to give up. She told CBS News, referring to the senator, "I want him to hear that we're not going anywhere." She said, crying, she added, "We're doing this for our kids."
Now, Jeff, it doesn't look like these strikes will end anytime soon. In fact, while they had planned to go back the next day, some teachers said they're willing to actually use their sick days to come back multiple times to the Capitol so they can keep trying to persuade lawmakers to make bigger change. And of course, it's very frustrating. You know, funding's down 28%. You get $6,000 a year raised. It doesn't seem like much when you've already, kind of been stepped back in the dark. Right. That's right.
Well, the opioid crisis in America is ever worsening. In only 6 years, the number of deaths from opioid overdoses has more than doubled to 42,249 victims. Now, because the epidemic is out of control, the Surgeon General is now encouraging Americans to carry with them an overdose antidote.
That's bad. Philadelphia is the sixth largest U.S. city and is now seriously debating on whether or not to open supervised injection sites. In 2016, the city lost 907 people to opioid overdoses. In 2017, that number rose to 1,200 people. Now, that number has tripled over the last 5 years, but why?
Well, the streets of Kensington District in downtown Philadelphia are one of the country's most well-known spots for heroin addicts. Ironically, just a few blocks away is the site where our founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence. While that was a declaration of freedom, the people in Kensington lead lives of imprisonment to their addictions.
CBS News recently visited the city and spoke with some of the locals, like a woman who called herself Rachel. She explained she had CPR performed on her to the point of being bruised because she had lost consciousness while doing drugs. She said the heroin is out of control completely. Any corner you go to, you get the heroin. People, they're overdosing left and right like it's no big deal.
Well, Rachel, who is now 30, has been using the drug for the past 13 years. She has 2 children, but says her body's desire for heroin is stronger than her desire to care for them. Wow. Now, there is a high demand in Kensington and therefore a big competition among the drug pushers to sell heroin. Well, this drives the cost low and the purity level up. Well, some users, or some, however, are lacing the drug with fentanyl, which is a much cheaper form, or it's a cheaper but more powerful opioid, and that causes higher risks of overdose.
And you can imagine that woman actually, based on what she said, she started when she was 17
right.
using the drug, and she's gotten so addicted to it, she's even had 2 children in the meantime, which she's admittedly said she cannot take care of it. She's got too much of a pull to do this drug.
Literally ruling her life.
That's right. Well, some officials in Philadelphia think that becoming one of the nation's first cities to allow so-called safe injection sites would help slow down the overdose rate. Now, these facilities would be places addicts could go to and shoot up heroin under the supervision of healthcare workers.
Well, treating the opioid crisis as a health issue is a new approach to hopefully slow down the overdoses. But opening clinics to aid addicts is not something everyone agrees with. At a public hearing in the Kensington neighborhood, residents spoke about the idea, explaining how it would not help them or their children who choose not to do drugs by being exposed to such things.
Right. But the Philadelphia Health Commissioner, Dr. Tom Farley, says they have a true health crisis and they need to act. He told CBS a user could walk in a safe injection site with, quote, their own drugs that they have bought on the street. They're given sterile equipment and they inject at that site. Now, if they were to have an overdose on the site, there would be medical staff who can revive them.
Well, Vancouver, Canada is Philadelphia's role model. They opened their first legal injection site almost 15 years ago. There are others, approximately 100 supervised injection sites in 66 cities around the world. Now, the Drug Enforcement Administration sent a statement to CBS News explaining their position in part by saying safe injection sites violate federal law and are therefore subject to legal action.
When questioned about the Philadelphia Health Commissioner simply said syringe injection programs operate in a legal gray zone and have done so for years. But Philly is not alone. Seattle and San Francisco are also considering similar injection sites with plans to open even sooner.
Well, addicts like Mark Easter of Philadelphia think the benefit of having an injection site to go to means life. Well, he told CBS reporters, "We want a safe place to inject it. We want a safe place to know that we can test the drug that we're injecting into our bodies to know whether or not it's actual product."
Interesting. Jeff, there's no doubt a controversial idea. This one is. And of course, the question on everybody's minds is, are tax dollars going to pay for that? You know, you think about the many different addictions that people have. Well, what are they going to open next? A safe drinking place where people can go and get drunk and, be revived if they have alcohol poisoning. I mean, there's many things on the table that can be presented, with these type of answers.
Well, a spokesman at the mayor's office did try to assure people that taxpayers' money would not go to this project. In fact, city leaders are hoping that a private company will take on the investment and run the injection sites. Well, we now turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has been covering a groundbreaking story for us in Africa where the earth is literally splitting apart. Larry, what are people, what are they saying is the cause for the earth cracking apart?
Though it may not be receiving as much attention as it has in other times, the state of the environment is nowhere near improving, as evidenced by events like the ground splitting in two recently near Nairobi, Kenya. A rift opened up in the ground some several miles long, 50 feet deep, and 65 feet across at its widest. Scientists themselves are divided as to what might be causing the breach. Some geologists, like Ben Andrews, suspect that the rupture is a result of tectonic activity, while earthquake scientists such as Wendy Bohan think the opening is a fissure created by torrential rains. One thing that scientists are not divided on, however, is the belief that the continent of Africa is splitting in two. Also splitting and mutating faster than scientists can keep up with it are pathogenic microorganisms being referred to as nightmare bacteria. The bacteria are so named due to the fact that they can't be killed by pharmaceuticals or are at least resistant to the lion's share of them. 50% of the people who acquire the bacteria are unable to survive infection. Medical officials say some of the primary means of transmission are person to person through open wounds and infections on the skin through stool. And hospitals and nursing homes are said to be some of the most dangerous environments. The bacteria have been found in 27 states so far, and with virtually no treatment options available, doctors say the best option is prevention. Speaking of pharmaceuticals, senators are intervening to try and stop price gouging by TriSource Pharma. The pharmaceutical manufacturer and distributor increased prices on one of its medications used for brain tumors and other ailments 14-fold, bringing the cost per pill to nearly $1,000. This has brought a bipartisan probe their way from lawmakers who say they would like to understand the reasons behind the tremendous spike. The drug has increased from $50 a pill in 2013 to $922 in 2018 and currently sells with absolutely no competition. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
It's definitely interesting what's taking place in Africa, but in the same manner, it's interesting that companies that are supposedly making drugs to help people are charging so much money for these things, making it almost out of reach just for the sake of profit. Right. Well, Hassan Rouhani, Recep Erdogan, and Vladimir Putin met in the Turkish capital to find a political solution to the Syrian conflict, with the international community not doing anything in the meantime. Putin said that nobody's doing anything except Iran, Turkey, and Russia and Iran are Bashar al-Assad's strongest allies, and Turkey has backed anti-government rebel fighters as well as sending forces to Afrin last month, driving out Kurdish militias.
Russia did approve the move by Turkey, but Iran said the control of Afrin should be returned to the Syrian government. Hassan Rouhani said that the fight against terrorism must continue and the remaining terrorists must be driven out, and no country has the right to make decisions for the future of Syria. The future of Syria belongs to the people of Syria. The meeting so far hasn't brought about concrete solutions. That is on the agenda for a future meeting of the three in Tehran.
Well, the North Korean and Russian foreign ministers will sit down for a meeting in Moscow from April 9th through 11th. They will discuss the present and future of their bilateral relations, adding to the denuclearization of the North Korean Peninsula. That will also be an item on the agenda.
In the meantime, North Korean state media has released an answer from Chinese President Xi Jinping to Kim Jung Un's telegram to the Chinese leader. Kim's letter expressed congratulations to Ping's re-election. In Ping's letter, he expressed the importance of maintaining a friendship between the two countries. Now, more attention has been placed on the two countries' relationship since Kim's surprise trip to China.
That's right. Russia has called on the U.S. to immediately halt its military activities on the Korean Peninsula. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that the drills do not help to reduce tensions. A statement from the Japanese media reports that North Korea has agreed to return to six-party talks about disarmament. The paper reported that Kim expressed his readiness to talk during his secret trip to China that we just talked about there. The last North Korean talks attended by the two Koreas, the U.S., Japan, Russia, and China, was held all the way back in 2009.
Well, Pyongyang at that time blamed U.S. aggression and its military presence in the region for the failed talks at that time.
And that's been a hot topic, too, in regards to dealing with North Korea, is the U.S.'s military presence and the drills that they consistently run there in cooperation with South Korea and Japan. Well, the U.S. and China are playing tit for tat, tariffs causing a trade war amongst the two countries. China recently put $3 billion in tariffs on 128 products imported from the U.S., including pork, wine, and fruit. Earlier, President Trump announced $60 billion in tariffs on Chinese products due to Beijing's violation of U.S. intellectual property rights. In March, the U.S. imposed tariffs on aluminum and steel.
While the U.S. president has been at odds with China on trade, he has called it a friend in dealing with North Korea. Trump said in a press conference, "What has been allowed to go on is disgraceful. When it comes to a time when our country can't make aluminum and steel, you almost don't have much of a country." Well, he also said that he views China as a friend, holding tremendous respect for President Xi, and how they have a great relationship. They are helping the U.S. a lot with North Korea.
Well, despite their togetherness in dealing with North Korea, business is business with the U.S. president as he presented to his trade representative to consider an additional $100 billion in tariffs against China. Those tariffs against computer and information technology, which are considered those areas which President feels that China is stealing intellectual property from the U.S., are what they're wanting to impose. Well, the U.S. Trade Representative said that any additional tariffs would only be considered after they undergo a public comment process.
Of course, China said that it would introduce tariffs on 100 products from the U.S. on things like vehicles and whiskey in retaliation to the U.S.'s round of tariffs.
Yeah, and so we see that the U.S. and China are kind of having a little bit of battle there with tariffs. At the same time, the U.S. in dealing with North Korea, looks like that North Korea is willing to at least come to the table to try to find some type of solution, including talks about denuclearization. So we've got a lot of things that are going on amongst the nations, but at this time we still don't really have a peaceful solution. Well, if you are looking for a peaceful solution and you want to find out how to prevent yourself and your family from suffering what you see taking place all over the world right now, you can contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, Yahweh'sBranch.com, or you can visit our website at YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do that by emailing at info@yahweh.com. Any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen now. And once again, don't forget to check out the Yisrael Says program and the Ask Yisrael program by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. It's up next. It's beneficial and life-saving information for you and your family, presented by Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.